Welcome to the Uncomfortable Conversations podcast, the untold stories of the 3HO Kundalini Yoga community. I'm your host, Guru Nishan, and I started this podcast several years ago with several intentions in mind, and we always read them at the beginning of every episode. If you haven't yet, please rate and review this podcast and please share it with a friend. It does help our ratings. And there are so many people that are still needing to listen to people's stories. So please share away. If you haven't heard, I also started a new podcast called Uncomfortable Conversations on predatory patterns in business, community, and culture. And you can learn more in the show notes on my media platform called Conversations You Can Feel. Thanks for tuning in, folks. We appreciate your listening support. Number one, to break the veil of silence that has long permeated and continues to strangle the 3HO Kundalini Yoga community in the name of neutrality. Number two, to validate and help clarify the complex feelings of those who have joined this lifestyle, were born and raised into it, and or who have practiced or taught Kundalini Yoga. Number three, to encourage active listening to uncomfortable conversations from this community as a revolutionary act of self and collective healing. Number four, to let survivors know that we see them, we believe them, we love them, and we will fight for their truth to be addressed. Number five, to let teachers who are denying, gaslighting, or spiritually bypassing know that what they are doing is willfully ignorant and re-traumatizing to victims. Number six, to illuminate the inherent racism, homophobia, cultural appropriation, and exploitation that perpetuates the teachings, 3HO lifestyle, and the overall community ethos. Number seven, to stop the perpetuation of gaslighting and victim shaming by naming it for what it is. Number eight, to dismantle internalized shame, guilt, toxic positivity, and light-washing mentality. Number nine, to honor all of the parts of ourselves that have been forgotten or silenced. Number 10, to honor each and every body that has come through this community, both named and unnamed. And number 11, to encourage people to do their own research, to process their own emotions, to get somatic therapy and cult-specific therapy, as well as other support as needed, to draw your own conclusions, and to learn to be critical thinkers rather than to just blindly follow anyone. Please remember that your story matters, and please share it when you're ready. We're here to listen and to support you. I want to welcome today's guest. His name is Siri Whitecrow. He was born Elias Seneca Whitecrow in 1972 in Juneau, Alaska. His mom, Satguru Kaur, joined 3HO with his older sister, Siri Kaur, in 1976, and his name was changed to Siri Singh Khalsa. His early life was spent between two different ashrams in Anchorage, Alaska. Then in 1979, he was sent to Espanola, New Mexico at 7 years old, living with two different families. In 1981, he was sent to the newly not yet established India program, GNFC, initially being sent to the girls' school because he was so young and only in third grade. After 4 years in India and tons of horrific abuse and plenty of resistance back, he was kicked out of that school and sent back to the United States of America. He spent half a year at Amritsar Academy in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where he was eventually asked to not return. He ended up in Los Angeles near his mom and close to the ashram, but by 1988, he left 3HO, Sikh Dharma, Kundalini Yoga completely, never to look back. Graffiti became a huge part of his life and currently still is. His graffiti name is Anger, and he runs one of the biggest graffiti crews in the world, which began in 1993 when his life was forever altered when his mentor was hit by a train, and he was shot 4 times by a Los Angeles police officer. He currently lives in Los Angeles, is married with 2 boys, and continues to navigate his life through art and creativity. You can learn more about him and his graffiti crew by supporting his work and watching the documentary Can't Be Stopped on Amazon. Ziri, it is a pleasure to have you on the podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I know it's taken a while to get us all set up and going, but I'm super happy to be here, and I'm super stoked to kind of tap into those memories that I have. So let's get the show on the road.
Hey, let's do this. So
Yeah.
I always like to just start and just say, why do you feel it's important to share your story?
I mean, storytelling is how we all got here. You know what I mean? I feel geeked out on learning about. I just learned about a lot of. My grandma was here. She's 96 years old, and I got pictures and learned a bunch about her side of the family, which I didn't know. And so I think if you want to know about yourself, you got to find out all those components that make up who you are, you know?
Yes.
So being a Sikh was a large component of who I was early on in my life. Obviously joining when I was 4 years old. It was normal at the time to be part of the religion. And then now to tell the story about it and just all the buzz around it, you know, it sort of makes me sad for the religion itself, because, and not Yogi Bhajan and not, you know, anybody, just like just because of the old history of it all, you know, and like Guru Gobind Singh or like Guru Nanak or something like that. Like, they don't deserve this type of like disrespect, right? I mean,
Truth.
yeah, like they fought, like what that guy like fought with his head off or something like that. Like I don't know. Like I remember
The stories.
some stories, right? So that's, I think it's important to tell the story, because I think there's been a large population of American Sikhs that disrespected the Indian religion, and that needs to be talked about, you know. And how do you share stories is through history, through written word, and now through podcasts, you know.
Right.
So
true.
Yeah, I think it's important. And I don't, I mean, like I talked about, and you introduced me as anger, and I usually talk in that tense, you know what I mean? And I think the reason that I talk in that tense is because that name was I say to people that it was like a shield and a sword at the same time. And I picked that name because it was the headspace that I was in when I came to Los Angeles after going through all the trials and tribulations that I went through. I was just an angry fucking kid, you know, and I was pissed off and kind of dropped in a war zone in Los Angeles, which was part of the rest of my story, you know.
That's right. So I'm going to pause you because you're jumping right to the anger part, which I love, because when I heard your graffiti name, I was like, fuck yeah, you know?
Yeah.
Like, of course, we grew up in such a culture that repressed our
yes.
you know, fundamental emotions, but much less an anger emotion that lets us create. So, and feel. So take us back. So your bio obviously tells us that your mom joined. So here you are in Alaska, living with your mom and sister.
Yeah, so we were born in Juneau. My mom was 20 years old when she had me. My sister was maybe 3 years older than me.
Okay.
But my sister was my half sister. I learned later on, like I learned in India, that she was my half sister because my dad, my mom.
Here we go.
This meeting is being recorded.
So my mom uh, had me with my dad, and then my dad had my sister with another woman. My dad and the other woman were negligent parents, and my mom is a fucking saint. So she started taking care of my sister and just felt like she needed to be loved and cared for. And eventually, the state of Alaska um, gave her
Custody of both of you.
custody. Sorry, yeah, she gave custody to my mom, which was abnormal that the two parents wouldn't. But they didn't like show up in court and stuff like that, and they were just never there. And my dad was a tugboat guy working on the docks, and I think he just was like he just had that gene, that cheating gene, that like philandering, and I think he was drinking a lot, and um probably not the best role model, right? For me to have in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And he wouldn't be in my life for a long time because we moved from Juneau, Alaska up to Anchorage, Alaska, and my mom started getting into yoga. And then she ended up joining the religion in 76. And that's when everything kind of changed, right? Like I got this new name, and I was calling my sister Siri, but I was named Siri. It was just it was interesting. It wasn't weird, but my mom was she was a hippie, and she took us out to and we lived on a hippie commune in Tennessee. And we just lived like a kind of bohemian lifestyle. My dad didn't, I think we lived in a house in Juneau that didn't have any electricity, and we were just kind of squatting there, is what my mom said. And I think my mom didn't have the stability from my father. And so I think she kind of found something new and interesting in the Sikh religion.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just what I've gotten from conversations with her, and I think that was like a time where people were having big awakenings. And I think when people were having big awakenings, it was a perfect time for predatory activities. I mean, it seems like, Yogi Bhajan wasn't the only guy using religion as a guise, right? So I started going to, we started going to the ashram a lot, and it was kind of cool for a little while to have like people around all the time, like just, there was a lot of good, I think there was a lot of good, there were a lot of good Sikhs, you know what I mean? There was like good people, and
good yogis, and they were practicing whole foods and eating together and kind of like all these kind of family like things. Sure.
Correct. There was like this time period, kind of like probably right when I first joined and was there for a little while. But I think, some of the things that happened that my dad wasn't around, that pissed him off. And then he ended up one day grabbing, like I lived right down the street from the ashram, and he grabbed me from the window and kidnapped me and took me for like 2-3 days. Right. Whoa. And I think that, along with that, I had gone through some sexual abuse just prior to when he kidnapped me, I think.
At the ashram, or separate from the ashram?
It was separate from the ashram. I was living at the ashram, and I had a friend, or a neighborhood kid that I had befriended, and I went over to his house, and there was a big brother that took advantage of me. And I was super young when that all happened, so I kind of feel like it was like a bottleneck in my life, like I was just dealing with abuse, and then dealing with my dad kind of being around, and him pulling off the kidnapping maneuver.
Jeez.
My mom, I'm pretty sure my mom kind of asked somebody, or maybe asked Yogi Bhajan, like what she should do, and his suggestion was to send me down to live with another family in Española at what was it called?
Maybe the
Hacienda
Guru Ramdas, maybe.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Question: was your sister there? Was he just kidnapping you, but not her, or was she already sent away?
I think I was the smallest available. I was in the window
through the
at the time.
window.
Yeah, I think I was in the window at the time.
Got it.
You
Got
know,
it. So
and I was
your sister was in Alaska when you got sent.
correct.
Got it. Okay,
And
so
then,
keep
correct.
going.
And then she came down to New Mexico, like I feel like it was like a half a year later.
She was
And
also
she lived
sent away.
so she lived with another family on that compound, and then I lived with two different families in my time there, and then they had like a little school on that compound where we all went to school. There was a school across the street, but no, we didn't go to the public school. We went to they created their own school atmosphere on the compound.
Mm-hmm.
And then
so do you remember living in New Mexico?
Yeah, it was a weird thing being away from my mom. I mean, she came to see me there, but I was like, I didn't understand why like I was living with new people, you know. And even though like I went about my day and just trudged along, I was always like why am I here? You know what I mean? Like, why aren't I connected with my mom? Like, this isn't normal, you know. But then like the talk about India started coming up, and there was kids that I was friends with, and older kids, and people were just starting to say that, you know, kids were going to be going to India. And then that sounded exciting, it sounded adventurous, and I probably was like on board at first, you know. So in 1981, we were sent out there. I think we were like the second group of people to be out there. There was like a little pilot program before us of a few, I think it was like 4 or 5 people had gone out before us, and then we were like a bigger contingency. So I ended up going to the girls' school for the first half year.
Can I
Yes.
pause you real quick? Before we jump to India, do you recall your time in New Mexico, or is it just kind of just the hazy kind of like, where's my mom? And I'm kind of going about it. Or do you actually remember the families and like things that happened at school?
I remember some things. I remember, are we still being recorded?
Uh-huh.
Okay, cool. I remember one instance where me and this other kid were singing Pink Floyd song, and it was "We Don't Need No Education, We Don't Need" that song. And I think we were singing it out loud, and he was like pissed that we did that, and he was like a head dude, so he chained us to a fence, you know. Yeah, like that was like one of the, like, I don't remember a lot of like weird shit in New Mexico. If there was stuff, I don't remember. It wasn't as big as what had already happened to me in Alaska, right? Sure. Like that was pretty,
to compare it to, right?
Yeah. So I mean,
it's just that your mom's not there, so it's just kind of
my
like,
mom, my mom's not there, so I'm always like, I'm living with this family, yeah. And there's like another kid living in the house with me, and it's like, I mean, I guess it's kind of adventurous, and I've already kind of lived that type of lifestyle, because, you know, it was like the 70s, and
right?
Yeah, squatting and just not having a lot of means. I mean, my mom was a young mom, and I think she was just trying to do shit on her own and trying to do the best that she could. And she probably latched on to something that felt really great in the Sikh religion. And as we know, that led to where we are today, which is, with all the anyways, so
Yeah. So
I don't
okay. So
remember.
1981. Yeah, 1981.
Yeah,
You're
I
born
don't
in
remember
India.
too much of New Mexico. Just going to school on their compound, living with a couple different families. That weird situation where I wasn't allowed to sing Pink Floyd. Like what the fuck. Um, and then 1981, we head out to India. It was really great initially that I was able to have my sister there at least. That was like one of the cool things that I always was like, man, it could have been a lot different. Not that bad things didn't start happening over at the boys' school, but I think I was already fucking a terror when I was at the girls' school. Like I was always like getting into trouble, and just that was like that was like a MO for me. And so
So
I
from the
think getting
moment you're arriving in India, like you already had a ferocity of not enjoyment, or was it just kind of like slowly you settled in and realized what India was going to be like, and this just became your way
I
to go
think
about it?
I think I mean I was a guy I went out there was like 9 years old, right? And I think that looking back on it and looking at the trauma that I had already been through up to that point, I think I just started to develop being angry.
Sure.
I was starting to be pissed off that I was in a situation that I couldn't get out of. I couldn't convince my mom in any type of words that I had in my vocabulary at that time to bring me home. I mean that's what I ultimately started to write to her. Because I went from not trying to jump too far ahead, but I went from being over at the girls' school, which was kind of cool because my sister was there. At least I had a family member nearby. But then I just remember like I think it was even that like winter or whatever. It just like when the girls and the boys all got together. I think we were staying the winter up in the girls' school or something like that, and it was just I think there was like the different ages of kids, and so you had like big kids, little kids, littler than little kids, medium kids, whatever, like they almost like it was almost like they everybody dropped off into tribes, and then um, it was almost Lord of the Flies type of deal, right? Because everybody started criticizing each other, and you know, older kids would start thinking that they had the power to um, green light little kids, and because we weren't bathing, because whatever we weren't falling in line the way that we were supposed to. um and I just remember like there was like a time like I remember like getting into my first fight with like an older kid or getting beat up like that time, and like I think we got hosed down because we were not taking showers, and um fuck, that's not really a good way to develop a kid's psyche, you know what I mean?
Or to
And
teach them hygiene, right? Neither one.
no, not at all. Not at all. I mean, I
And
got
you're
fucked
little
teeth.
kids.
I got like because a large reason why I fucking pay a lot of money for my teeth is because I spent time in India, and I that 4 years was like it was bad on my. I mean, just I
Mouth,
remember
no
I remember.
proper dentistry.
Well, I just like. I'm not going to blame it all on India, but I didn't brush my. There was times that I didn't brush my teeth for months. No, I didn't take baths for months. So I get over to the boys' school.
Can
I
I ask you
join up.
about the girls' school real quick before you
Uh
go to the
huh.
boys'
Go
school?
ahead.
When you
Mhm.
arrived at the girls' school, was it that all the little kids, like the 5, 6, 7, 8 year olds, were at the girls' school because they didn't have enough kids to have them at the boys' school and to separate them? Like, I'm trying to understand why
I
the
think
little
it was
ones were
like
there.
kindergarten to third grade was at the girls' school. Fourth
Got it.
grade to 10th grade was at the boys' school.
Got it. So your initial living with the other age group in that kindergarten to third grade group, you're living with kind of
Correct.
that hierarchy of ages, but then you're the older girls, which are going to be fourth grade and up, right? Of the girls all
Yep.
the way up to whatever high school ages are there,
Yep.
including your sister, are
Yep.
in the girls' school, but they're obviously going to their age classes, right? So you
Correct.
see her around. It's not like you're living in the dorms together. You're still living in the dorms with the other kids of the kindergarten to
And
third grade
in a boys dorm
in a
compared to a
boys'
girls
dorm
dorm.
in
Yeah.
this in over at the girls' school.
In the girls school.
Right.
Correct.
And there were other kids that were 5 years old, 6 years old, and 7 years old, and 8 years old, right? So all of you of that age group from all of the kids around the world were there at the girls'
Exactly.
school. Got it. And then the
Exactly.
older girls, so the girls and boys school were separate. And then GNFC was basically fourth grade up. So 10 years old and up
Right.
or so
Yep.
was GNFC. So then basically you're a 10-year-old interacting with some of those inner high school age boys. And this is where you start talking about like the little ones are getting hosed down or stuff like this, because now you're around a whole hierarchy of older boys too, right?
Well, I would love to be a fly on the wall to know how, how things got, how the structure got put together. But how I remember is there was a few older, adults that took care of us. One of them was this guy, Nanak Dev. And then the other guys, I want to say his name was Kirtan Singh or something like that. And they came with their families and all that stuff. Um, and I don't know. I think, I think Nanak Dev would probably be a key component to how the structure got put together.
I wasn't
And
asking how the structure, but more just so that we could hear it, so that when you say you transition to the boys' school, we have a sense of what that means. Meaning there's older. So that's all I was saying it out loud, was that from fourth, basically 10 years old and up, anybody there that was from 10 to say 15, 16, 17 are now over at GNFC.
correct. Yeah. So I joined up with the Nalwa house. Everybody, had a separate house they were in. There was the Atari house, the Nalwa house, and I forgot the other one. And then I think they added a fourth one while I was there. Um, and The structure, was like, like I said, like the big kids, little kids, and then people were, there was guys that were supposed to look after you that were in your house, and then there was everything that happened during school, and then there was all the, there was also the 3 months out of the year that we wouldn't be in school, and we would go down and travel to the plains and stuff like that. And those were a lot of good learning times. There was a lot of it wasn't all bad. I mean, you know one of the things we did, there was like these wrestling matches that they would put out there, and it was like girls versus boys or girl versus boy, right? Girls versus boy. Yeah. So it would start out like three girls versus a guy wrestling. And then they would throw like another girl in there. And it would be like, eventually it would be like 6 girls, 8 girls, 10 girls trying to wrestle a guy. I always took away from that how strong a man is, and it's always resonated with me to treasure women. You know what I mean? Like they're one of the best things in my life to have around, because um, I'm somebody that needs a lot of redirecting and confirmation, and women, the women that I have in my life and the women that I surround myself with. That's just like one of the most powerful things. So, the things that weren't cool about being in India is there was, well, for me, my headmaster was a drunk, and then I was a bad kid, and then that ended up leading to me getting caned a lot, and so I almost became like a whipping boy in that sort of sense. I would always, whether I did something right or wrong, I would always be in the wrong because I was always getting caned, and it's degrading. Like sometimes you're getting caned in front of your whole house. You know what I mean? Everybody in your, where you're sleeping, your quarters or whatever. Sometimes you're getting caned in front of people at the dining room table. Sometimes they just had a way of being demeaning to you. I dealt with a lot of abuse from just, if you didn't answer something the right way, they would take the rulers to your hands. So there was a lot of abuse from the people that were working at the school that weren't part of the 3HO scenery, right?
Indian staff, the Indian.
Yeah, but that dude Nanak Dev, he really just got to be a power monger. He started practicing Gutka, and he just became this he just became a fucking dick, and he really pressed his power in the wrong direction. And I don't think there was anybody that was like a good cop. It was always bad cop, and then he had his dude Siri Narankar that was like his enforcer, right? And he was the one that was, well, fuck, my sister dated him for a little while. I remember that. So I ended up being like his little brother or something like that. And he was an asshole back then. And I didn't like him a lot. And I ended up, I ended up getting probably slapped up by him a lot, physically abused by him a few times, but there were some cool older kids too. And one of them, as I said to you, was your brother, right? Prabhajot. Yeah, he was always one of the chill, mellow ones. He was never like maniacal and trying to trick you into things. He was always a straight shooter. That's what I remember. And there was a lot, it was sad because by the end of my stay there, I started abusing other kids, and that's right. Mangala Sadhu Sangeet Singh, right, which you're related to, right?
He's also my brother. Yeah, my youngest brother.
Yeah, so weird,
married.
right? I took a scrub brush to his face, and it was probably the last time that I let myself be that weak of a man, right? I realized after that I was, because of my size and my stature, that I was put on this earth to be a protector. I actually apologized to him later on through social media. I was able to get a hold of him and tell him how sorry I was that happened, and that I think for me it was like a big snowball of emotions, abuse, trauma, all wrapped up, and when I started doing that to him, they saw the signs and they got rid of me. They kicked me out of India. But by that time they had kind of built me into the person that I was going to become,
So it sounds like you had direct beating from the Indian staff, the head teacher, the head master, and then also within the network of the people that are supposed to overlook the 3HO group, it's Nanak Dev, the enforcer, Sri Narankar. They're both beating up on you in whatever capacities, whether it's all the ways caning, but other forms of abuse, right?
Yeah, physical. I don't think, I don't think the caning was more like an Indian thing, but there was weird shit you would do sadhana, and if you fell asleep, then you would have to go and jump in the fucking cold ass pool because you were falling asleep. But it's like, it's fucking 3 or 4 in the morning.
Mm.
I understand we're trying to build ourselves up to be better like yogis, but like, I'm fucking tired, and I shouldn't have to go do
Yes.
that. And like, there was dudes that like got stoned, like people threw rocks at them because they fucked up and did something bad. You know what I mean? That's not supposed to be the way of the world. That's too Lord of the Flies. We're getting too, we're becoming the judge, jury, and executioners. And what kind of world do you have? That's a dystopia at that point.
Mhm.
You have a bunch of, you have the wrong people trying to teach the right thing in the wrong way. That's how I would put it, and I had enough of Siri Narankar. I had enough of Nanak Dev. I had enough of getting into fights with other dudes, and there was just like, it was just, it's just a lot of it just normal teenage shit. You know what I mean? A lot of it's just, guys are always going through pissing contests,
So there's kind of that, but within the context of not having enough food, not actually having proper care, not actually having love and attention, not having real basic things that most children are getting outside of their
Right.
school setting. So
Right.
while there might be some elements of like boys will be boys, it's hyper vigilant on top of all the neglect that everyone's experiencing of
Right.
all ages.
Well, because everybody's there and probably confused why they're there. Nobody's understanding the concept, and nobody has control over their own lives. Nobody's choosing to wear what they're wearing. It's all being put in front of you. You're going to wear these shoes. You're going to wear these socks. You're going to put on this. Even if we didn't have to wear the uniform that they required us for the school, then we had to wear like kurtas and churidars, and you know what I mean, like the regular Sikh shit. And it was like,
always wearing your turban.
Yeah, I don't know, like I started one of the things that came out of India is there was 2 guys that had brought their skateboards. One of them was the oldest kid. He was like a cool guy. This one guy, actually, there was this other dude, Dida. He was pretty cool, and he was a good artist. I remember him always doing he was always drawing, he was into heavy metal, and he always drew really cool canvases. Anyways, they brought their skateboards, and then that inspired other people to get into skating. And then at the boys' school, there really wasn't anywhere to skate. You had to kind of skate in the gym. That was like the only place it was like flat surfaced. And so we would all ride our moms and get our skateboards sent to us. And then we would try to get skating magazines sent to us. So Thrasher magazine, Trans World Skate magazine. And then we would just try to learn how to do tricks from looking at the magazines. And so that's one of the things like that I took from India, and it kept with me, is like I learned a lot about the music that I liked. I became a metalhead because a lot of the dudes were listening to Metallica, Iron Maiden, Dio, Black Sabbath, all those type of bands, and I really was attracted to that type of music. I know there was like, other people like Bruce Springsteen and Cars and this and that. And so that was really a cool thing. I remember like there was like tape trading from other people that were at other schools. There was like older kids that were like trading music, and like they were like, there was like another school called Woodstock, I think it was. And like there was a lot of other kids from the United States, and I think people from other countries that were going to that school. And then there was another school that like there was a teacher that was like a white teacher there or something like that, and he was into music. And so I remember like talking to older kids, and they were like, oh yeah, we're trading music, and I gave him a bunch of my tapes, and then he gave me a bunch of this new tapes, and it was like, that's fucking kind of cool. That was like way before internet, and like people were just like up on a side of a mountain in the Himalayas. They were trying to figure out um, how to have music, and then you could eventually learn how to record tapes, and you would cover and you would start
Fill that
recording the
gap.
music, and that was like a big thing to have recorded music from other people and have a good list of music. I mean, and that's even put important to this day, And so I took that music part of that with me and the skating part of that with me, and I ended up getting flown back to Los Angeles for a quick brief moment and then going to school in Albuquerque, New Mexico at the Amritsar Academy.
Yeah, so can I
Um,
just pause you real quick
you
and just
can,
because again,
you can.
as listeners, we really want to get a feeling for what it was like in India, the things like you wrap it up fast, kind of saying, I was, I was just angry, and of course I responded in these ways. But I'm wondering if
Right,
there's just anything more you want to give us a lens into. I know that um whether it's the food or whether it's like how you learned to wash your clothes or didn't, or just how you became like what I'm hearing you say is you went over young. Those first few months when you were over the girls' school was a good transition because your sister was there, but then it just
right.
got steadily more and more intense and more abusive, and then you developed a persona back to that had less and less tolerance to deal with it, all the way up until you had where you became the predator to other young boys, including Mangala. And that's a beautiful wrap up, but I also know you had lots of experiences that kind of built to these things. And I'm just wondering if there's anything more you want to give us a lens into.
Um, no, I mean, there's tons of experiences that I had that kind of reflect on who I am today. I mean, one of the cool experiences that I had was when we lived in Rishikesh, or going back all the way to Espanola. And I was telling somebody this story the other day. Um, I always wanted to have a dog, and I could never have one because of just the way that I was living my life, right? But right in the where I lived in the ashram compound area, whatever, somebody had a dog and they were having puppies, and I told my mom that they said I could have a dog, and my mom was like, you can't have a dog. Like, you're not, I was like about to go to India or something like that. And I was like, come on, I know which one I want. I'm going to name it Bear, like that one. That's the one I want, mom. And she's like, nah, you're not going to have a dog. And so I took off to India. And one winter we were down in Rishikesh, and a dog started coming around and hanging out with us, and everybody kind of adopted her, um, and gave her food and stuff like that. And so she started to chill with us, and like she became like our mascot sort of. And then I took care of the dog, right? I fed it, all that stuff, and the dog was pregnant. And so the dog had puppies. All the puppies died. And we ended up like putting them in shoe boxes and sending them down the Ganges River. Bear ended up coming back with us to uh, GNFC. And when we were up there, somebody was like, hey, you got to get rid of her. Like, you can't, because it was school time. We had to, go back into school. And I was like, what? Like, and they were like, yeah, you got to take her way somewhere and go tie her up. Like, they told me where to take her, and like, or like whatever. I ended up riding this bike with her on a leash, and I tied her up at this uh, on this tree, and there was like a little village nearby. So I was like, oh, maybe like they'll, I don't know. She had like a chance. You know what I mean? Fuck you. In the middle of the Himalayas, and you want to give love to a dog, and you gotta like, it's not gonna work out. Anyways, I rode my bike all the way back, and when I get back to the school, the dog's waiting for me.
Of course.
I don't I don't know how it beat me. I mean, you know, you have to.
That's so
There's a
sweet.
lot of switchbacks to get to back to the school, and I don't know how if she like beelined it and just went through the forest, but she was back at the school when I got back there.
Wow.
I'm such an animal person now. You know what I mean? It transferred so big into my life. I ended up my first girlfriend when I moved to Los Angeles. They were a big dog cat family, and then ever since then, my life has always been dogs and cats, and it's a big reason me and my wife are together. We're just big animal people, you know.
That's
Um,
beautiful.
so that was a cool story to take away from there. Um, you know, at the end, there was like a weird, like some of my, I think I was just maybe I don't know if it was because I was a dick to your brother. I don't know if it was because I stopped like hanging out with like the cool little kids. I still want to know like why, like they all jumped me, they all beat me up, you know?
Who did?
Yeah,
All the little kids?
all the little kids. It was like this, you know. I'm not gonna name names, you know what I mean? But like, it was a bunch of kids that were my friends, you know, like a little while ago, and like, you know, the details are hazy in my mind on why, but I just remember getting, you know, all of a sudden, like people that were my friends for the last, you know, handful of years or so, because I knew some of those kids even going back to New Mexico, I think. Anyways, um, it was probably it was the first time I got jumped by some people, and it wasn't gonna be the last time I was introduced to violence, you know. Um, so that was kind of weird. I'm trying to think, you know, I
And were
mean,
you already bullying on others at that time, and that was kind of like a retaliation, or was that kind of more a part of what built up your bullying towards others too?
it might have been a little bit of that. It might have been that I think it was more that I was not. Um, I think it, you know, that how I remember it is just that I was separating myself from all the little kids and they had their cool guy, you know, group and their hierarchy within that group, right? Because there was that with the little kids, there was that with the middle kids, there was that with the older kids, you know, there was the couple cool kids that got to like be, you know, social directors sort of people, you know, and there was other people that weren't as inclined.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think the I think they could have used somebody that just had a lot more humility and a lot more, you know, wherewithal on how to bring people together in a better way. Nanak Dev was not the right guy at that time. Um, I think the other guy that was there, I don't think he was a strong enough leader, and um, yeah, I think that was like some of the weakest things that happened, or one of the biggest glaring weak points was that they didn't. But that wasn't. I mean, that wasn't what the Sikh religion was about. You know what I mean? Like sending their best guy to give the best advice and to, you know, mold and, you know, create strong young men. I I think that was a guise that they wanted us to believe, but you know,
Yeah, and
I think,
needing something truthful to actually latch on to in a whole world that's been fabricated.
well, we all know that Yogi Bhajan was all about making money.
Yep.
He was all
All the
about
money
fucking
laundering, all the invisible money.
all the crappy things that he was just a crappy human being. It ends up, you know. Um, I was, you know, I ended up after India and after my experience at Amritsar Academy.
So you
I
get
just
kicked out. Hold on. Nope. You get
yeah
kicked out of
go ahead
India.
go ahead.
They
Uh-huh.
send you back to New Mexico as if you're going to be rehabilitated at the Amritsar Academy, because that's where the kids that are not going to India go if they're in New
Correct.
Mexico. And
Yeah,
how long are you at Amritsar Academy? Maybe 6 months, did
maybe
you
a
say?
half a year.
Yeah.
But I hooked up with my first girlfriend there, so that was rad. She wasn't a Sikh. That was rad, you know. Um, And I smoked my first cigarette when I was there. I did, like there was this guy Jai Dev that was in India, and was living there, and he had cut his hair, and he was, like running around partying, and there was other dudes that were going to Amritsar Academy, and they weren't quite Sikhs, and they were like into metal and just, at that time everybody liked to go to concerts, and people were experimenting with fucking alcohol and weed and smoking cigarettes for their first time, or we were going to the bowling alley and drinking coffee and smoking cigarettes, feeling like we were outlaws, and I kept skateboarding with me. I didn't skate a whole lot when I was out there, but I still skated. That was like what I identified as. I was a skater metalhead.
Mhm.
And yeah, I don't know. I don't think I think I just had a lot of I I wouldn't say it was everybody else's fault where I was just pissed, and I think I've always been a person that I speak my mind when I'm pissed. I don't let it just brew in me and like hold it in. And
And that was totally not the dharmic way.
yeah, it wasn't you were supposed to be more subservient and more quiet and just go about your shit,
And
and I
also
was more
neutral. You weren't supposed to actually have emotions and feel
correct.
anything or want something else or have an opinion of your own. And it sounds like you had plenty of those.
Yeah. I think I owe a lot of that to skateboarding and music, because skateboarding and music was molding me at that time. And I was looking at Thrasher magazine and looking at all the graffiti in the background. And I think back then, like I had a little tag name, and I was trying to like write like how people were writing in the magazines when I was already in India. Like I was already like, because my grandfather was an artist, and he had really good handwriting, in uh, a way that I would try to like soothe myself was that I would make these little books. I would take regular paper and I would fold it and cut it, and then I would fold it again, and then I would put something through it to make it like into a small book, and then I would try to emulate my grandfather's writing, because he had it like perfect handwriting, and I really liked his handwriting. It was like it was so neat, it was so perfect. And when he would write me a letter, I would be like, oh wow, how does he keep the line so straight, and because it was like a regular piece of paper. I mean, I learned later that he was putting pencil in there and then he was erasing it, right, to get them all straight. But as a little kid, you were just like, man, my grandfather's the best. Like he was an aviation enthusiast, and he was just a dope artist. And he was like um, because my dad was absent in my life, he was like the guy that I looked up to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, so that was one of the main the things that I did to kind of, when I would feel homesick, you know what I mean? I would make these little books, and I don't remember what I was writing in it, but I was writing something. Maybe it was emotion, maybe it was stories. I can't remember what it was, but um, I think um, it was what I kind of got into,
Mm-hmm.
like it was like, it
Right,
was
you're
almost
writing,
like,
right? Your own
yeah,
learning the
writing. Like
art
I've been
of
writing
letters and it's yeah, it's interesting this
tagging and
evolution.
and and
Um,
graffiti and writing on things and art and um,
and hold on,
being creative.
I know you're gonna bring
What?
us there, but I want to bring us back real quick because
Yes, ma'am.
you're at Amritsar Academy. I
Yes.
want to go back to India because I know your sister a little bit and our families and brothers and these types of things are connected.
Yep.
I know your mom did go to India during that one of those holiday interims or something. And I'm curious if
Correct.
you were there at that time.
Yeah. No, I was there. She came. I felt like she didn't come as many times as she said, but she said she came like 3 or 4 times while I was there in
Okay.
India. One of the times I remember your brother got a hole through his leg
I heard
from
this
somebody
story.
doing a rat's tail on him. and my mom took care of him and healed him back to life.
Which it sounds like would not have happened if she weren't there. So he's been
I
very
know.
grateful.
Yeah, she was like but still, like I remember my mom being there, and we were in Rishikesh, and I fell asleep at something happened at yoga in the morning, and then like I ended up like having to stand in a circle, like and not move for like hours and hours and hours, like. And my mom was there, and I was like, Mom, like you can't get me out of this. Like, what the fuck?
What the
I don't know,
fuck?
like
This is inhumane treatment, don't you think so?
I don't want to give. Look, whatever we went through in India was super terrible. It wasn't supposed to happen the way that it went down, but it really fucking helped build some solid individuals. Like I don't know everybody that, that I don't know everybody like maybe like my sister does, but I can just imagine that like the way that I feel about life and the way that I feel like my feet are planted in this earth and that I have a purpose and a reason to be here. I think that religion and those experiences, although they were bad, they also just built really solid people, because you have
And
to
I would
go
say
through those.
solid bonds.
Correct.
More than that, even, right? Like, because we all have
Correct.
to go back and look at ourselves through new lenses, and that can be tough because we have to examine traumas and things that we
Oh
might have
yeah.
just not examined.
Oh
But I
yeah.
don't disagree with you, right? It creates solid bonds and resilience, but it's not. It's somewhere in there, like it makes us who we are, is what I hear you saying. It's
Oh, for
made you
sure.
who you are,
For
and I
sure.
appreciate. What I want to give you, though, is I want to give you the light back on that and say
Right.
you've done that. Those
Yes.
experience didn't do that. Your willingness to continue leading your life and finding your path and finding your purpose and letting circumstances change you. So
Yep.
rather than give that power to those circumstances, you've had circumstances, whether it was in India and you had that moment where you were just like, this is not the man I want to be. And the rest of your life, you had a new direction, even if that was a seed planted that didn't actually come to manifest 10 or so years later. But it
Yes.
gave you that sense of the shaping of who you are as a protector. And that's powerful, Siri. That's your
Yep.
healing work and your creative healing that you've alchemized and brought that. There's plenty of us that have gone through shit and are here and hold all that shit inside still. We don't have that outlet for it yet because we haven't even acknowledged the anger we hold.
Right.
So I want to just give that back again. You started feeling your anger young, which is more than a lot of us. And you got kicked out of places for it. And you got beat up for it. You got lots of other things, but I see that as a very healthy part of you coming to your own.
Yes. Yep. And it was, I mean, the things that we went through and the people that we became, I think we also, I mean, I sought out to have good people around me after that, and I sought out, like I was just able to land and be around some people that were just caring, good, solid people. I mean, my first girlfriend in the early 90s, I was still kind of like involved in the religion a little bit. I had oh shit, that's right. So I had gotten I was involved in some gangster type activities. Let's
Did
just
this
say
happen from Amritsar to LA, or did it start happening in New Mexico?
when I was in LA after being in Amritsar, I got back to LA. I got in my graffiti crew, and then I got jumped into a gang, and then we had problems with another gang because this dude had gotten killed, and we were going back and forth, and then somebody called my house. Somebody called my house and threatened. They were like, "We're going to kill your son." This and that. They talk shit to my mom, right? And so my mom freaked out, and she's like, reverts back to, she's still in Sikh religion, but I'm kind of like, I'm wearing my hair down at this point, like I'm got my hat on, and like, I'm a total different dude at this point,
Cholo
you know?
style.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, most definitely. And so I went back to live in New Mexico. My mom lined me up like with a job with working with some guy, and I learned how to drive his tractor, and then he let me drive his truck, which I ended up wrecking. And then I went up to uh, um, what's that place? Ramdas Puri, the
Yeah.
where all the
Yeah.
solstices were held, and I
Yeah.
went up for like a survival camp. And then I remember I hooked up with this chick, Omkar. That was the one Sikh girl that I did hook up with.
Right
Thumbs up
on.
on that.
You said thumbs up on that.
We were, yeah.
There was some
Anyway,
hope.
I'm not gonna air our dirty laundry. We were doing good things in weird places. Let's say that. Um, and then I was after I was she dropped me off to take the bus, and I took the bus up to Montana to Red Lodge, and on the way I learned about Stevie Ray Vaughan's passing. So that was like what 1990 or something like that, I think. Um, and so I ended up living up there for a few weeks with my grandfather, and then I was gonna go and meet my dad for the first time, and he flaked on me. And so then it wouldn't be for I wouldn't talk to him for like another 7 years till 97. Um, and then I ended up becoming friends with my dad after meeting him, and we had a great relationship for the rest of his life. And he passed away in 2020.
Mm.
But yeah, that was a trippy story. It's a trip that my life got so hectic at one point that I got sent to New Mexico when I was 9 years old, and then when I was, I had to be like 19 or 18 or something like that. Like I got sent to New Mexico again. That was like my mom's like go-to move, like send him to Mexico. Everything's gonna be much better when he goes out there. So, um, you know, I think, I mean, with all the going back to what I said in the beginning of our conversation about a religion that the Siri Singh Saab and other people just kind of trampled all over that a good religion, and that's where I think I felt like I was like I had heard people leaving the religion. I remember hearing that like when I was in India, like, oh yeah, that guy left the religion. It was like this big deal, and like I just felt like there was so much bullshit. Like why was I sniffing that out when I was so young, you know? Um, but I also had like a shitty fucking time, like that was those like I had a shitty kind of. I don't think everybody's experience was like mine in the Sikh religion. I'm sure there's people kind of like it, but I don't think it would be. I think I would be an anomaly, and I think I came from. I think my abuse started early on, and that took me a long time to like admit, like I hid that for years because I didn't want to let people know about my sexual abuse. I didn't want to believe that another man had his way with me. But once I went through enough therapy, you know what I mean? Had my kids, went through more therapy, married the most beautiful, wonderful woman who's works for DCFS as a social worker and just has like the mind for dealing with a character like me. Um, my life has been so wonderful. Like I've been surrounded by great women that have just and men also,
But between my first girlfriend and this relationship, those are the two relationships that I like have had in my life that created just it made me just more compassionate of a person. And even though I had like this like everybody knows me for being anger, and I have this, you know, story which maybe you'll check out on the documentary. And you know, I can admit that I get caught up in being a bad guy, but I always feel like I come from a good place. You know what I mean? Like I'm not I don't think I'm a bad guy in the sense of I'm trying to jack people and make people's lives shitty. I'm just I think I'm one of those guys that like my buddy Scotty said it the best when he met me. He's like you're one of those guys that is down for that person or whoever it is like 100%, and you'll give everything, but like if somebody crosses you one time, you'll write them off. And I'm like, he just had met me. He didn't know me really, but he like, you know, like within like a week or two, he was just like, hey, like he's a jujitsu trainer, you know, so he's a coach, and he just had like this way of looking at me and kind of judging me for who I was. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of me. He's like, you're prideful. You got pride and you want people to, you know, treat you with respect, and you're not going to back down to if people don't treat you with respect. And I was like, yeah, that's kind of me, you know? Yeah. And we're good friends up until this day.
I love that.
So yeah, it was a windy, twisty road, especially the 12 years spent in the religion. Um,
I
but
want to ask you a little bit about
yeah,
that. So
go
you end
ahead.
up in LA,
Yeah,
and it sounds like your mom is just trying to mitigate uh, your anger expression in a world that you don't belong in, and yet she's fully entrenched in the religion the whole time. So
correct.
from you being sent to New Mexico early, and then being sent to India, and then back to New Mexico, and then eventually to LA because she's there, what's going on with her all this time? And you may not know this, but curious, because she's a single mom, she's obviously connected to the Dharma in some capacity, and you and your sister are both in India, so that's being funded in some capacity.
Right. Well, I mean, when I got back, I mean, I think early on getting back to Los Angeles, I skated for a little bit, didn't really get into trouble, but I started to get into trouble a lot. And I was, I got into a lot of like assaults when I was, like I got in, like I ended up being that guy that would really go to some physical places. And one of my first big things was that I beat up a cop in the mall out here, and it was a big deal. It was on TV, all this shit. And so that was like early on in my career. And that kind of,
Now, is this when you're still
like
a young person under your mom's
pretty
jurisdiction?
young. I'm pretty young. My mom is still in the religion, but
Okay.
I'm already out of it.
Okay.
And we have our Thanksgiving, and I took off to the Beverly Center to hang out with my friends, and we ended up there was some guys that a buddy of mine he was like a criminal looking dude, he had the criminal looking look, like he had just been out of prison, right? I mean, really, that's what it was. And he started mad dogging these two guys, and then we end up in a fight, and then I end up hitting them with a chain, but then they end up being cops, and then I ended up running away and escaping for a day, and then like a dumb criminal, I end up back in the Beverly Center, and then I got arrested for it. And that started to be a common thing, you know what I mean? I started,
And your
get
mom just is who she is in LA, just trying to like figure out what to do. Like that's how come what you when you said
she,
like her go-to was to call Yogi Bhajan and you get sent somewhere. Like that
yeah,
was
and
the
then she
only
kicked.
thing.
Well, what ended up happening is I was stealing a lot of my supplies. So I would go into stores. Me and my friends we'd rack, we'd boost, we'd have to get spray paint cans, we'd have to get markers. We would steal all of our stuff. And so what I would start to do is, because my mom didn't want me to leave the religion, and I was living with her, I had this cupboard in the back where the carport was, and I had a lock on it. And I would take my turban off at night, or I would, leave upstairs, go in the back, take my turban off, put it in that locker, and then lock it up. And then I would go out for the night, kind of, start smoking weed, started drinking, go out, tagging, doing, mischievous things. And then I would usually, come in a little bit late, put my turban back on, sloppily probably. And, my mom knew that I was getting into bad shit, like she knew that I was experimenting. And so then when I ended up in juvenile hall because of that assault, she ended up getting me, because she was still in the religion, and it was like a weird thing for those type of people to be in those rooms in a juvenile hall, like it's just not a common place.
Right, to see Sikhs dressed in all white in the
Correct.
in the court. Got
So
it.
I was able to get out. I was able to go to she got me into like a charter hospital. And so I didn't have to be like in regular juvenile hall. And then I spent like 3 months in that thing. And then I just kept on getting in trouble. Like I just had like a lot of shit on my jacket. And then in 1992, me and two of my friends, we were all experimenting a lot with LSD and shrooms, and we all lived in Hollywood, and we were riding our bikes a lot. So we took our bikes down to Venice. And
is this you and your friends outside of being Sikh, or is this some of the Sikh
correct?
friends?
Yeah, no, at this point I'm not, like, I know the Sikh people, but like I see them a little bit. I might score them some weed. Like some of them wanted to, like, they were like, "Hey, can you get weed?" And I was like, "Yeah, I can get you weed." And I would hook them up with weed, and I would see them playing video games. But I was already like kind of anti-Sikh in my head, but having to like play it off for my mom because I was living with her. But that one cupboard where I would put my turban, I would also put all my stolen supplies in there. So one day she went in there, or like my stepdad went in there. And that's the other thing. She got remarried, and she married like a super dweeby dude. And that like didn't help at all, because he was trying to be like a father figure to me. And I was like, fuck you. You get the fuck out of here.
A Sikh guy.
Yeah. He was a Sikh guy. He was a skinny Canadian dude. And at that point, there wasn't anybody that was going to be, replacing my dad. And,
much less a skinny dweeb
wearing
a turban. Right.
So right around when she found all those stolen supplies, or they found it, she was like, "Oh, you got to leave. Like, you can't be here anymore." Well, I had hooked up with my first girlfriend at that point.
Got it.
We were starting to date, and my one buddy was like, "Oh, you can come live with me." Like, just, and his mom brought me in and all that stuff. And then I ended up living with my girlfriend and her family for almost like our whole relationship, like 6-7 years. Okay. I ended up, trippy story, right? I was a skater, and I got into, you like the Chili Peppers? You like the Chili Peppers, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So like, I'm in New Mexico, and this one dude's like, he's like, take these tapes. He's like, I don't like these guys. And it's the Chili Peppers. And I'm like, oh shit. I was like, I want to listen to this. And it was skate music. They were very crossed into the skating scene, And so I loved it, listened to it, became a Chili Peppers fan. I get to fucking Los Angeles, start dating this chick, and she's the goddaughter of the manager of the Chili Peppers. So literally, like, it was just weird. Like, I was just like seeing like skaters that I saw in the magazines, but I was watching them skate in real life. Wow. Like they were doing all these huge wall rides and ollies and fucking airs. And I was like, just 2 years ago, I was in India, like watching this dude in a magazine. And now I'm sitting here and I'm like watching him do the exact, like what he was doing in the magazine. It was so rad, you know? And yeah, I ended up with that, with Katja and her family. And that was probably the most nurturing,
Stable.
most accepting 6-7 years of my life. Um,
Wow.
they ended up taking care of. I ended up. What ended up happening? Oh, so no, wait. So the Venice story. That's where I was. We got down to Venice and we took. My girlfriend she went to this school called Crossroads and they were going on a vision quest. That was part of their graduation. So she went up to Ojai on this like vision quest, right? And so me and my boys, we took off, and I think I got some money from a settlement. So I had money to spend, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna buy a bunch of acid for us, and we're gonna take acid. And so we take acid at Venice Beach, right? We drive around the canals for a little bit, and the shit's not hitting yet. So I'm like, let's go buy some more. Buy some more. At that point, I had taken like 5 hits, and I think my boys had taken 3 hits each. And we start riding our bikes north up the beach. And along the way, a few things happened. Like we smoked a joint, and then we came up to this weird RV that was all like old and decrepit. But I was probably on acid, and it was like more old and decrepit than I thought. Or right? I mean, when you're on hallucinogens, things are different. And as I like explored into this RV, the guy that owned the RV comes in and he's like, "What are you doing in my house? Get out of here." And I run out, I jump on my bike and I cruise across fucking PCH and cars are honking at me. And we get on the other side and we're riding our bikes and we're all fucking just zinging fucking hard, right? And then all of a sudden I get up to, there's this place on PCH that people know, it's a Chart House. It used to be Chart House. It's different now though. And there's a dog barking. It's German Shepherd. He's just barking. Rah, 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 rah. We're across the street and then we like back across. So now we're going south down PCH. And the dog, as we're going right by the dog, it's barking louder and louder. And it starts reminding me of Terminator. Right?
And then you were gonna say Cujo.
No, it starts reminding me of Terminator, and then like I just got this weird, like I just started having a bad trip. I started getting into like a bad headspace, different things that had happened, to me probably over my whole life, right? Probably the insecurity that I felt just as a human being on this earth put me in a position to think that people were staring at me and judging me and look at him and what is he doing? And, at this point I had my shirt off. I had my hair down. So I had like super long hair from being a Sikh, right? And I was just riding my bike, cruising down, getting into fights with people along the way. Some guy pulled out a machete on me. And then finally, like I was staring like at this guy on his bike, and I kicked his bike, and that guy called the cop, and the cop shows up, and we get into a big fight, me and the cop. We end up going head up with each other. Like I'm boxing with a cop, and there's like people all around us watching this fight go down, right? And it's a couple times. I'm in the matrix. I could see his moves before he's even doing anything. I'm like picking him apart, right? As soon as I take his baton away from him, the guy that I kicked his bike, he throws his bike at me. When I turn to look at him, I turn back at the cop. He shoots me and hits me 2 times in my stomach. One of them went through my arm, and then the third bullet went through my arm up here and hit me down. And then I woke up out of being shot, and I was like in a war zone, right? Like there's helicopters and sand flying everywhere, and there's people, it just sounds like chaos. And I'm feeling like a fish out of water. I'm feeling like like I'm almost not supposed to be here anymore, and like I probably had like a transitioning experience, you know what I mean? I probably shouldn't be here, but because I took so much acid and the strychnine, it like stabilized my life, And also I think so this is funny, and the Sikh religion comes into this so in such a big way. And so I wake up and they're trying to handcuff me, but I still got energy in me. I'm still fighting them, They're trying to put my arms behind my back, and I'm just like, nah, you're not gonna do it. You're not gonna fucking put your hand. I'm not going that way. Because I was resisting arrest initially. That's how I got into the fight, because he wanted to arrest me. As soon as he grabbed me, I was just like, I flipped out, So I held on for a little while, and then they finally got me handcuffed in the front. I passed out, and I woke up again in the ambulance, and there's a man sitting over me, and I busted. Like they put you in a pressure suit when you get shot. They put you. It's like when they put a pressure around your arm to get your pressure. Well, they put you in a whole suit to keep your body from releasing all the blood, right?
Oh.
I busted out of this suit. I fucking, like busted out of it. And the guy, I just remember his face. He looked like a fucking cute ass walrus. That's what he looked like, right? And he's like, "Hey man," he's like, "you gotta chill." He's like, "You're gonna be okay. You gotta." And he pushed me back down, and I like passed out again. And I woke up in the hospital, and the nurse, she's like, "You've been shot. You were, blah 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 blah. You went through surgery." I pass out again, and I wake back up, and my mom's there, and she's washing my hair, right? Like I got sand and blood all in my hair, and it had been a couple days that I'd been passed out, and like the surgery and all that stuff, and I didn't know, but they had gotten together. My mom had gotten all my friends together, and they had like a prayer circle for me, and they all sat there and did some Sikh prayer. Like all my friends, that like my new graffiti gang friends, like all the people that cared about me at this point in my life, they all sat there and just did what my mom told them to do, because they wanted me to live, right?
Wow.
And so I end up getting sent to like a jail ward, where I spent like 2 weeks up there, and they were about to send me to a regular county jail, where I was open like a fish, right? Like my whole stomach was like, I don't know if you can see it, but see that right there?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then, like, at that time it was like this big, right? It was wide open, and all the homies are all like, "Oh, they're gonna send you to county. Fuck, you're gonna get, fucked, because they're not gonna take care of you. They're not gonna look after you. You're gonna get staph infection and this." And I'm like, "Oh fuck, my life is gonna suck right now, right?" And so I'm walking out. I have an IV and everything. I'm still like, not able to hold myself up, and I'm waiting in line to go to the county jail. And then they call my name. They're like, "White Crow, you're released." And my mom had hooked up with my girlfriend and her whole family at that time. And because her family was connected in Hollywood, and they were like, they knew people, right? They had a really good friend named Peter Ross. And Peter Ross was like a kick-ass lawyer, and he took my case, and he literally went in there, and because he was so connected in the Santa Monica courts, I ended up, well, the judge took leniency on me. He gave me 500 hours community service working with the police, right? And I went to Santa Monica College. I did all the right things. I got work. I had a family around me, people that loved me. Like they saw that like shit was different and like that I didn't deserve to like go back to jail for this thing, right? And so I ended up working at this substation where the cops and the firemen worked. And as soon as I showed up, they knew who I was because my case was like on the news. It was like people knew about this whole like that day. Two men had gotten shot 1 mile from each other at the beach. The other guy had gotten killed, and that guy was friends of in my circle too. Like
Wow.
and he looks like me. Like people that knew him, they're like, you look like John so and so. It's a trip. Like people have like seen me and been like one of his best friends was like, the dude looks like John. And then they'll tell him, yeah, he got shot that same day right up the beach from him. And he survived.
Wow.
And, John killed, got,
Killed.
So
Wow.
the cops took me in over it there. I really like, if it wasn't for those couple cops that like took me in and they were just like treated me like a regular person, I would probably be even more pissed at the authority, right? But these two guys and everybody there was just kind of like, they're like, hey, come on, have some coffee with us. You don't have to work. We'll cover your hours. They would always sign off, 8 hours, 10 hours for me, but they would make me work like 2 hours. They were like, you don't have to do all that. We'll take care of you. And then I ended up after I got married, well, I'll go back. After I got married, I ended up living in Copville. I mean, all my neighbors were all cops, right? And like even my one friend across the street, Tony, who moved up to Idaho, he knew the cop that shot me, you know? And the cop that shot me, like I became friends with him.
Wow.
It was a weird turn of events. He got sent to my neighborhood where the Sikh neighborhood was, and he rode a bike. He was a bike cop. And then he would get his bikes fixed. The cops would get their bikes fixed at my bike shop. And then all my homies at the bike shop, they would be like, "Oh, what happened? You got shot?" And I was like, "Yeah, that dude, like he had a picture on his wall." And I was like, "That guy shot me." And then they would barb at him when he came in. They were like, "Why'd you shoot our friend? Like, that's wrong." Da, 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 da. And I'd see him, like I'd run through a yellow light and he'd be with his partner, and I'd run through a red light in my bike, and I'd be like, "Hey, what's up, Mr. Moreno?" It was like, it became, I think I tried to call on him because I got caught on a weed case in 2000, and I tried to get him to come to my defense, but it didn't work because he was kind of like on his way. He was still working for the county, and he couldn't do it, And then after I got out on that case, I saw him, and I was walking with my then to be wife. We were going to the Hollywood Bowl, and he's like, "Hey, what happened to you?" And now this is like, like early 2000s. It's been 10 years since he shot me, but he was in the hospital that night crying. He wasn't like one of these dick cops that was like, "Oh, whatever, I shot this kid and he deserved it." He was really compassionate about what had happened, and that really struck a big chord with me when I knew that he was in the hospital. I was like, I don't hate him. I don't hate him, and he didn't hate me, and it was just a bad situation that went wrong, and we just made the best out of it. So I think that's what survivors do. Right? We make the best out of every situation.
Yeah, and become
So,
better, and I just hear so much of that in you of just
yeah,
these different stages of your recognition around like, yeah, I'm not going to be like that. Being the man as big as I am, as strong as I am, I'm a protector, or just different
yeah,
stages. Like, I can't hate this person because they're showing such compassion. Another thing you said that's really stood out is that you intentionally have surrounded yourself by people that are good, loving people, that you've created this nurturing, whether it was your fellow graffiti crew, whether it was those early friends that your mom had chanting around you, like these
Yep.
solid relationships that you didn't get to have during those Sikh religion days, but you absolutely fostered as you move forward in your life. It really
Yeah.
stands out.
And I sometimes regret not keeping. I think I was so over the religion at the point when I left it that I felt like I needed to kind of like distance myself from the whole thing.
Sure.
And I like sometimes I look at my sister and she has relationships with a lot of those people that, but she like I I don't know, I think I had a lot of uh, I think I developed a lot of distrust with the people that I was going to school with, the friends, that group of friends. I didn't trust them after those few years in India. I didn't trust anybody anymore, and I
Mhm.
and I'm like that today. I'm not like, I mean, I explained to you. My buddy said like you're trusting until the first time somebody does me wrong. I'm like, because I would never do that to you. I would never do you wrong, and I would never try to go out of my way to like hurt your feelings. And why would you want to do the same to me?
Sure.
And so, it's a trick, but that's a tricky friendship is a tricky wall to climb. You know what I mean? Like
It is.
everybody's trying to extract something from a friendship and it's all different.
Sure.
So,
Did you always maintain a close relationship with your mom and your sister?
yes, yes. Me and my sister have always been close. I think we've always been close the whole time through. I think more after India. I think probably after I got shot. You know what I mean? And I think that the concept of almost being lost or or being lost to your family and then your family losing you. That's a super great point to like start to reconnect and like make sure your wiring is all good. Um, I would say with my mom, I think we have a great relationship. I think I would say definitely around when my kids were born, a lot more question marks, a lot more questions came up in my mind about her motives, how what was she thinking? You know what I mean? Like that in no time amongst having my kids the last almost 20 years would I ever think of sending them somewhere. Like what kind of like that's just eh, I, I, but I didn't sign up for religion the way that she did, and religion can make you do funky things. I'm not a religious guy these days. I'm kind of, I wouldn't say I'm an atheist. I'm not an agnostic. I'm more, I follow maybe along the lines of the natives. You know what I mean? The Native Americans, and just kind of, a big creator, and nature is our universe right now. And what we're surrounded with um, is just the beautifulness of what we're surrounded with is our heaven, right? Like we're here living it in the moment. There was a time, because my wife is Jewish, there was a time where I was kind of thinking, I was like, oh, maybe if I did that, like we would become closer, you know but I ended up not doing it, right? I
Mm.
ended up like going against it. But her rabbi at the time, because my kids went to um, school, the rabbi gave me this book, and it was I read the preface, and it was talking about religion, and it said it explained religion as a bottle that shattered into a million pieces a long time ago, or no, that humanity was a bottle, and that it shattered into a million pieces, and all the different pieces are religion, right? Everybody's part of a different religion, and until that bottle comes back together and the religions are all in cohesion with each other, that humanity will not be one, right? And I
Mm.
thought that was really fucking cool. And I was like, hey, I was like, I don't have to join any type of religion to have solace. You know what I mean? Like I don't like
Yes.
I can be on this earth and be happy just existing and learning and passing on knowledge. And that's what we're supposed to be about, you
Yeah,
know?
and being the creator that you are, right? Which
Yes.
is so brilliant. Which I do want to swing back to before we wrap this up is
Yep.
as the coming into your real name, coming into your anger tag name, and coming into being a graffiti artist. I know it happened around the time that you went from New Mexico into LA, and you were in LA, and it sounds like you were 17, 18, 19, getting
Correct.
into it. And then around this time you got shot is not too long later. That's like 21. So
Yeah. 20, yeah, I was
so
like 20, 21.
yeah, so just kind of it sounds like those are really formative years for that transition and the finding your artistry and becoming a tag artist. And if you want to speak to any of that, because it sounds like this is who you are today, and that those early years prior to this getting shot were foundation years that really has served your identity.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, my graffiti crew, which is called CBS or Can't Be Stopped, was was founded at Hollywood High in 1984, right? And I joined in 1988. And when I joined, there was a guy named Skate, and he was my mentor. He was the guy that was running the crew at that time, and he was just a fucking great guy that had kind of grown up in a difficult situation and been homeless himself in Hollywood, and but he brought together all these different kids that needed a place to be, right? And um, what I joined in 1988, we created something really special at that time, and unfortunately, Skate would get hit by a train in 1993,
Mm.
and that would, with me being shot in 1992, and then he was kind of like he took a bunch of acid when I got shot because he wanted to feel the way that I was feeling, because he just wanted to like get into my headspace, I guess, you know. But we we had a really, I mean, he had a great relationship with people. I really, I felt he was, when he got hit by the train and he was taken from us, it was like one of the biggest losses that I've ever had, right? And it kind of, at that point, if I needed to exit the building, I should have exited the building, because that was a perfect time to do it. But I kind of took on the responsibility of leadership. I started formulating my own meetings and bringing people together instead of people, a lot of times in death, people will separate from each other and kind of distance from each other. And I tried to do the best I could to bring people together. And I just started trying to emulate what I saw him do, try to be the best sounding board for the people that were my friends at that time. And then um, I started to recruit younger guys. We started to have such a big name at that time. We were My crew was in all the graffiti magazines at that time, and we were kind of the talk of the town. So like, in that sort of sense, then once you do something that makes you makes the light shine on you,
Yeah,
people are always going to want to come and be part of that light, right?
right.
And so part of my job then was to be an ambassador for the crew and a mentor, the way that Skate was, and the way that maybe maybe that I wish that other people had done for me, right?
Yes. Yes.
I wish that other people had been more like I think if Prabha Joe was like a really like he should have had more leadership because his way of thinking was a lot more cool, calm, and collected. Where like Siri Narankar was like a fiery, like just like we're gonna do this way, you know. Like sorry to mention that, but like that's what leaders do. And I wouldn't say I was always the best leader because I'm an emotional person, but I I stayed consistent in doing it, and I over the decades, over the last 3 decades, I've been able to um, create or maintain our legacy and add to our legacy throughout the years, which next year will be our 40th year in that we've been around. And I think to
Incredible.
last for that long is miraculous, you know? And
Yes.
one of the things that I took from being from CBS was the name Can't Be Stopped. It was such a mantra that helped me when I was coming through that transition, coming through all that like negativity and all these people doubting me. I even remember Siri Narankar because I would wear my hair down, but I hated it like just in a ponytail. I liked it really uh, braided. So I would always go to like different girls that would like my sister or different like my friend's sister, and people would braid my hair, right? Like it would always be my thing. I would call people and they would braid my hair. And I remember my graffiti crew was not that big of a deal at that point. And I remember Siri Narankar like making a comment and be like, "Wow, I don't see you guys around. I don't know who are you guys, you know?" And I was like, "All right." I was like, "One day you'll see, motherfucker." I was like, "We're gonna be the biggest fucking graffiti crew you ever fucking heard of, you know?" And if
And
that
you're
dude looks up graffiti, if he looks up graffiti and he looks up my name and he looks up Can't Be Stopped, we're all over the country. We're just opened our first chapter in Australia. We're in Europe. We're all over the place. We've done, you know, I mean, we're on
yeah.
Jeopardy. We're on Jeopardy. We're a fucking question on fucking Jeopardy. I mean, come on, you
Hell
know?
yes. Hell
So
yes.
yeah, it really, you know, it came full circle for me when I got to be part of my graffiti crew. That was like I was like, all right, like I got this name and I gotta like, even though it's an aggressive name, I'm gonna use it for good. And it's been tough, you know what I mean? Because a lot of times I get caught up in, am I really becoming my name?
Mm.
Of like and sometimes I want to know if I'm crossing the line and I'm bringing a character into my normal life, right?
Mm.
And like sometimes I'm like, hey, I can't be this person to my kids. I can't be the same person that I am on the streets to my wife and my kids. I've had to like learn how to be a more calm person and not let myself, and it's hard. Almost impossible. I mean, I've, you know, I could I've tried a lot of things and I've done a lot of work on myself. I've gone to into a lot of therapy. Emotions get the best of you, you know, and your emotions are part of your trauma. And the trauma that you went through isn't even all the trauma that
You
you
remember
bring on what about family trauma?
generational,
Generational
ancestral.
trauma. Yeah. Like there's times where I
Absolutely.
think because I'm Native American, I try to correlate. I wonder if in somewhere in my lineage, my great grandfather, they got sent to a boarding school, and I assimilate the boarding school that I went to as like, am I living somebody's trauma from my family? And that's why I went through that experience. Like I correlate them sometimes, you
Mhm.
know, I'm like, that's weird.
And not only that, but also to add to it that the anger that you might have come into this body with wasn't just those experiences you've had to endure personally, but it can
Right,
also be generational anger. It can be
right.
many, and this is neuroscientific, where they're talking about epigenetic trauma
Yes.
is the generations that are passed through the mother line through the womb. And so when you speak of, Native American erasure, the amount of indigenous slaughter, removing of the names, removing of God, relationship to the
Yep.
land, relationship to family, your reaction. And one of the things about your reaction inside the Dharma, where a lot of people's coping strategy was the opposite, right? They
Yeah.
became more timid, or they used the yoga to be the perfect yogi, or they used the Sikh religion to be the perfect Sikh. And
Yep.
you just started feeling that anger, right? But it was unacceptable in that culture. And so one thing I'm really kind of in awe a bit about your story here and telling
Hmm.
is your willingness to just be done. Like, fuck y'all, fuck this, fuck everyone. And then you just went to the next thing. Now it
Wait, wait,
moved.
wait. But
Go ahead.
will you braid my hair real quick?
But we
Braid
braid
my
my hair.
hair, then
But
fuck you.
then fuck off. Then fuck off. Love that, because this is somewhat how the trauma bonds of the kids of our community came together. Is not everybody was friendly. There were the cliques. There were definitely the age segregations, as you spoke
Yeah.
about. But that
Yep.
last commentary you talked about, Siri Narankar, talking about your graffiti crew, this is in the LA time, right? Because you're
Yeah.
already in the graffiti crew, and now you're kind of getting that same bully culture is still showing up in LA amongst all of some of those people were kind of on the
Oh yeah.
outskirts of 3HO, but they were living together. And some people were still on full Sikh. Some people were working at the ranch. And we're talking about an age group of these kids that were 18 to like 21-ish. They didn't really know what they were doing. Prob, my brother, was a part of that. My younger brother,
Right.
or my other brother, Kieran, was living in LA at the time.
Uh-huh.
Sangeet was there. I mean, there's all these guys. So I guess I'm pointing out that you've really painted quite a picture for us, even though you were choosing quite young to be on the outskirts of that. And you've created solid relationships, because within Can't Be Stopped, you actually experienced real friendship, real mentorship,
Yes.
real leadership,
Yes.
real loyalty. Even if that loyalty was coming from gang culture, from what's considered gang culture, if they put graffiti artists in that category, which we know has roots to hip hop culture. But I'm pointing this out because here in Sikh Dharma, 3HO, Kundalini Yoga, the relationships were Lord of the Flies, competition, nobody trusts anyone, while the veneer is white and pure, and yoga and the Sikh religion and all these mystical stories of this is the right way to live.
Right.
Meanwhile, you go find gang culture, graffiti culture, whatever music that moved you, which was the antithesis of Sikh Dharma, and you
Yep.
find real connection. You find a family and relationships that actually show up and nurture you to experience, I can choose who I surround myself by, and they're going to be good people,
Yep.
and it really stands out. It sounds that your trajectory is just so beautiful. And I just
Thank you
want to
so
say
much.
I
I
honor
appreciate
your
that.
voice and your story here, and also your willingness to just self-examine, your willingness
Yeah.
to be like, I don't want to do that. Like, I realize this persona is a part of me, and I see how I transferred it other parts. Like, that's you still growing right now. And it's, again, it's beautiful.
I like it. I like growing. I mean, I think it's our job to grow every day, and I think, a lot of times people. Um, One of the things I've learned is that you can't always just hold on to all your old friends, and making new friends and meeting new people is like the primary greatest thing that we can do in our lives as humans, is to reach out and touch people, right? And like I'm a very social person, and I probably, on an average, every week I make at least one or two new friends. Because I walk into a bar and hey, how you doing? What's up? Oh, and I just start conversation, and all of a sudden you're talking about something and, oh, you got property next to you. All right, cool. Like I'm looking for property too. And you become friends, you know? And like, I really love and cherish that. And I think people should spend more time focusing on new relationships instead of repairing all the old ones. And all the old ones, you know what you're going to get out of them. Yeah, it's your best friend. Yeah, you've known them since, but does he lift you up? Does he fucking carry you the way that you need to be carried? Because you're not the same person you were when you were 15 years old. You're a 40-year-old man. You're a 45-year-old man. You need to be, you know, you need different things in a friend at that point in your life, you know?
Yeah, man.
And so I think that's one of the things that I look at in friendships and gaining friendships and you know, a lot of times being in my position because I'm a leader in a big graffiti crew, like friendships are a luxury. You know what I mean? Because I have to make decisions that don't require friendship. You know what I mean? It's nothing to do with our friendship.
You're in a position of leadership and you're guiding
Of
something
leadership.
bigger
I'm
than any individual relationship.
right. I'm trying to like I'm running the graffiti crew. Oh, okay, this person's not doing graffiti. Well, he's a great guy, but if he's not painting graffiti, then we're here for this one purpose to paint do graffiti. We're not just a social crew, you know. And so that's always tough. You know what I mean? I was just telling a buddy of mine when I was on the phone with him, I was like, man, I hate losing friends. I wish I could have all the friends that I had throughout all the years, but like relationships are fucking tough. You know what I mean? And you can't always make everybody happy when you're trying to push a boat in a certain direction. You know, you got a whole ship to worry about. You can't just worry about, well, this guy's, you know, he's feeling cold and left out. It's like, all right, we'll go somewhere where there's warmth. You know, like you can't always be there. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a dick about
No,
things, and
you
maybe,
can't be all things to all people. That's what I hear you
yeah,
saying. And there's different roles you play at different places. And
yeah,
but yeah, I guess as a child also of this community, and not having gone to India and with very different experiences,
right,
I can't say I've always had deep, loving, trusting relationships. These are things I'm starting to realize about myself, and so it's
right,
something I really hear as I listen to your story. Um, in just like, whoa, you know, one was, I don't need to have a religion to find solace.
yeah,
Um, and that one of the ways that I've kind of witnessed you having done this is a lot through your own purpose, finding art, finding your tag name, finding your crew has led to lots of purpose, which has helped you to keep self-examining and and that's, you know, creativity for creativity's sake is different than trying to be a productive, I want to create this to sell this, right? And so
yeah,
you, out of this place of your expression, has come community, connection, culture, opportunity, and all of that, I think, can teach all of us something listening, in that this is a
yeah,
part of how we heal. It's what I've learned in trauma informed therapy is this is a part of how we heal, what you're talking about. Find new
yep.
friendships, right? Have creative outlets that support who you are, that support your emotional release. Anyway, it's just been great talking to you. I just
It's
really
been great
appreciate
talking to you also. I'm sorry if we went a little bit over an hour.
no. We
I
go
don't
well over
when
an
you
hour
told me that, I was
always.
like, that is not even in my stratosphere.
It's such a
1 hour
lie.
conversations.
It's such a lie. I've never had a 1 hour conversation on
So I'm
this
like, how can she
podcast.
do 1 hour podcast? I was like,
It's
that's
a
hard.
lie. We do
Yeah,
3 hour podcasts. So we've
I
actually
know.
kept it quite short to get today.
I know,
But I feel
right?
like we've covered a lot of territory. So I think it's just been excellent. We always
It
just go
has.
as long as it needs to go. Um,
Yep.
I want to just wrap up by saying, is there any last thing you want to speak about your own story, or that you want to speak out to survivors of this 3HO community
Um,
or fellow peers, or anything last you want to say?
yeah, man, you know, I wish I would have known more in a lot of ways about some of the abuse that I'm sure not so much the guys, but more of the women that had to deal with the type of shit that the type of people men are sometimes, you know? And I'm sure that was like a tough thing for women to deal with being in that religion because I know that it's just a tough thing, a tough dichotomy anyways, right? And so I think that's one of the things that I regret the most is like, I don't know. I think I'm always like an action oriented person. So I would always like want to protect people and want to make sure that people were feeling good. And like, nobody should have to, you know, if religion is supposed to make you feel good, then why the fuck did I feel so shitty all those years? And it's not the religion, it's the people that were running it. It's not, again, Sikhism is a beautiful, beautiful religion that millions of people love and adore. And the American Sikh community tarnished that in such a big way. And I hope that there's some type of healing that can happen, um, in some sort of sense. And I don't know what that is really, but I know that there's still people that are part of the Sikh religion, and I hope it's better for them now. And I hope there's better leadership and more accountability. Um, but doing anything large takes a lot of. There's so many moving parts. There's so many ways for things to kind of break down, and I just know that from like running my crew. Like when I started getting up into 150 members in my crew, it started a lot more problems started happening. When I had a crew of like 70 people, it was manageable, and then the problems just keep on, and people are doing things that they shouldn't be doing. So I think there was just a breakdown of I don't know. We got a raw deal.
We got a raw
on
deal.
the, we got a raw
Well,
deal on the people that ran the program in India for the most part. I mean, that was like I don't know what was going on in the States. I don't know about too much of the like stuff that was happening at ashrams and stuff like that. I mean, most of my, like I jammed out a lot, so I would have to delve into all the I guess I would have to listen to the podcast to know more about it, right?
I mean, there's a lot of inside. There's a lot of this podcast we've had are people's individual stories. So some people reveal certain things based on their story, but there are
But they're
definitely a
not
lot
all
of
from
people.
India, right?
Not at all, not at all. And then
Yeah.
a lot of them are later stages. So one of the things that I think has been most profound, at least for me to witness, has been that, from the year 2000s forward, 2015
Right.
forward, the amount of replication of the early abuse almost to a T that happened in the later decades that continue to happen now. Like it's so replicated. It's like a franchise.
Oh,
And
they got better at doing it the wrong way.
it's perfected
Yeah.
and then normalized, utilizing the Sikh religion, utilizing yoga, utilizing all these things that have created legitimacy, even
Mm,
though what the academics and what the articles and what the research has now been debunking is that none of it ever had legitimacy. YB's story never had legitimacy, any of it. So of course the people he puts in leadership, no matter what positions of leadership they held, whether it was Nanak Dev or Saket Palkar or so and so, he's moving them around like
oh
checkers,
yeah.
and they're dealing with their own complex trauma and their families. And anyway, this is why I find the listening so valuable, because it's
Yeah.
like a tapestry of a puzzle, and
Right.
everybody's story adds to that puzzle, and how we extract ourselves, recover, if we ever do, is completely such a unique tale. But we all have our different coping mechanisms, and we all have our survival strategies. And then some of us just never even noticed any of it until 2020 happened, where people like you and other people were like, fuck this, decades ago,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
so it's such an
Exactly.
interesting amalgamation. But the common thread is that there's a lot of good-hearted people that have been fucked over for many, many, many years, and that theme continues, because as much as they've used the religion, that's what culture indoctrination does.
Right.
Cults have a formula. They do usually legitimize themselves through a religious entity. Ours happen to use the Sikh religion, where most
Right.
of them are using fundamentalist Christian. A lot are using, some can use TM, some are using the Moonies. Like they're all these different branches. So if I've learned anything in the last couple of years, it's like, whoa, cultic studies helps us, because the
Yes.
more we can see ourselves within a framework, as opposed to thinking it's so unique or special or something even to be figured out. Like, I hear you, like, those people got a raw deal, the adults, but the
Yeah.
kids did because those adults were traumatized. And now traumatized people are leading traumatized people, and
Oh
it's
God.
compacted trauma. And,
Terrible.
talking about Nanak Dev, like what happened to his kids, and it's just like on and on, the ripple effect. But
Right.
what stands out to me
What
is
happened to his kids?
just that they're dealing with neglect because he's now in charge of all of these other kids. So where does his
Right.
attention go? His attention
Oh,
is
got
going
you. Yeah.
outward. So he, the relationship of his own children disintegrated. They had their own traumas because of his distance as well as, his behavior. But there are
Yeah.
other people that had wonderful, beautiful experiences with that family, and they weren't a part of those abuse years. They had beautiful experiences in Germany with them once they moved there. So that's what makes this web so complex, is one person's predator
Mm,
is somebody else's savior at a
right.
different stage in the timeline. Like,
So I
fuck.
have a really good friend. His name's James Hopkins,
Mm.
and I met him in the early '90s when he was a chiropractor, and my then girlfriend and her family used to go to him, and he used to do the chili peppers and all that stuff. And we've maintained a friendship throughout all the years. He's in the art world, so we cross lines in that area. And as I was telling him about the Sikh stuff and the reparations, all that type of stuff, he started telling me the story about. He's like, "Hey, I was friend with the Siri Singh Sab's son. I forget his name at this
Well,
point.
there's Rombeer or Colbeer. So the
I
older or
think
the
it's
younger one.
Ron Beer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was the older
And
one.
so, and I mean, Jamie's like a little bit older than me. I think he's like 65. You know what I mean? So he was around and hanging out with Ron Beer. I think it was Ron Beer Singh, and what did he say to me? He's like, "I never wanted to tell you this. I always knew you had that, like, that religion, that you had that background, but I never wanted to tell you this story." He's like, "I was hanging out with Ron Beer Singh one night, and they were smoking weed and drinking and all this shit, and he's like he just starts telling me about his dad and what a fucking piece of shit his dad is. And then his dad fucking said to him one day, he's like he's like you know he's like he said something about you know you know what's the most important thing, or he said something about money being God. That's what it was. I'll get the exact wording and I'll text it to you. But it was so fucking weird, like that his son was telling my homie and in this like innocent area, right? About like what a piece of shit his dad was, and that his dad like uses his religion to fucking make money and to fucking have power over people. And his dad admits it to him and says it to him, you know? He's like, "Yeah, money is God." Like something like that. It's like money is God. Don't believe anything else. Nobody else is powerful. Money is everything. You need to make money to be anything in this world. And that's the guy that was running this whole religion, was all
Fuck.
just doing it just
That's
to make
right.
some money.
Yep. A
He's dealing
sadistic
arms.
prick. Dealing
Yeah. I mean,
arms, dealing drugs, dealing gems, dealing fake fraud businesses that you can
yeah.
not getting karma on the phone, dealing in
Right?
people's hearts, dealing in
Crazy.
stealing people's humanity and the humanity of children,
Right?
raping our
And
young
then you got all these,
girls.
and isn't like a lot of Sikh people like still defending him though?
I mean,
There's like
there's
a
a
whole
whole
section of
group
Sikhs that
called
are,
I forget what they're called. They call them the pro Yogi Bhajan side or something. But I just have zero interest and zero
oh
tolerance for
God.
that whole segment of folks, because for me it brings me back to this 1985
Right.
rhetoric, and I remember it from when I was 8, and I didn't like it then. Why would I
Mm,
possibly want to hear it now? So I'm kind of like
right.
you, in like,
Exactly.
God, you were a kid. How did people not see this stuff too? And I feel the same way. Like, I was 15 by the time I understood there was so much hypocrisy. I had no idea
Yeah.
there was sadistic torture and grooming and abuse in this capacity,
Mm,
but I definitely knew that there was infidelity and incongruency, and they was all full of
right.
hypocrisy, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so I
Crazy.
really, yeah, thank you. Thank you for bringing your voice and your story here. Um,
Most definitely.
and
I had
I
a great
feel like
time.
a lot of listeners are really going to love this. Lastly, before we wrap up, I just want to say to listeners that I just find it really profound that your tag name is anger, and that I find it would be, when I first heard it, I thought it was profound. I find that
Right.
the ability to have an artist tag name, whatever that artistry is that you find in the world, to be able
Right.
to learn how to access our emotions, but specifically our anger from 3HO, we got a tremendous amount of indoctrination against that emotion. And it's
Yes.
built into the teachings. Yogi Bhajan would say a lot of emotion commotion and a lot of kriyas even. And again, even if you weren't into the yoga or you were only into the Sikh religion, a lot of this stuff was just kind of in the ethos of our permeated consciousness. And so it's affected
Correct.
all of us, whether or not we understand it. And so just like they played Guru Ram Das chants, and that was supposed to affect our consciousness, you know, repressing emotions, especially one of the most vital emotions, our anger, because our anger
Yes.
is one of the things that notifies our body that something's not right. So it's a
Correct.
protective emotion. And so one of the things that I've learned in complex trauma healing, because there's layers of emotions that can be charged in us and frozen stuck. And so we might get through layers of it in our teens and then more of it in our 20s and more of it in our 30s. And you have major transformations to access your emotional body. But this
Right.
anger specifically, I just want to remind all of us that it's just okay to have to constantly reignite and invest in your relationship with anger, because it's the fire of our creativity. It's one of the healthiest emotions that when we utilize it and let it move through us healthily,
Yes.
it's what we create with. It's where your original life force is expressed through. But when that's
Yeah.
repressed, what happens is, and then again, this is in trauma theory, like this is how things are showing up in trauma informed things. Us learning what our bodies need to do with our anger is unique to each of us and
Right.
how we do it. And if we don't do that, we blow that pain through the people we love. We just
Right.
do it in ways that we don't call anger, or it blows up and then it's an unhealthy form of anger. So one of the books that has helped me to really start realizing that every emotion is a teacher and not something that we have to repress is a book called The Language of Emotions.
Okay.
And I'm just saying this for listeners. I'll have it in the show notes so you can look at it. And it may or may not be the right stage for you in your healing process. But if it is, and you're wrestling with not even being able to locate what a sensation feels like, there's
Right.
been years and years and years that I can't even recognize what anger feels like in my body. It just showed up as acid, or it showed up as indigestion, or it showed up as
Right.
heat and heat in
Mm.
my stomach or heat in my neck. And these are things I didn't know how to identify. That was actually me
Right.
unconsciously learning very young that how to not feel my anger, because I learned really quickly I would be stuffed into baby pose if I expressed that emotion. So as children,
Oh
we
boy.
adapt, right? We
Yeah.
adapt. And so all of us have our unique strategies, but this anger, having an artist come on today that has embodied this and continues to wrestle and struggle with his own relationship to it. And
Of
it's one of the
course.
healthiest things. It shows
Thank
you're
you very much.
human and it shows you're living your humanness. And I think if any one of us in 3HO on our healing process need anything, it's to recognize we're human. We're not superhuman. We're not here to change the planet. You have the right to feel what you feel, to need what you need, and to be loved by wonderful, supportive people, just as our
Hell
guest
yeah.
has shared today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you. And keep on. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, no, you can finish.
Oh, okay. Keep on fighting the good fight and telling and making sure that this podcast is here um, to spread the goodness, right? I mean, I
That's
think
right.
that's what I'm trying to do is, even though I'm an angry person, I'm still trying to spread goodness, even though you're dealing with some issues that are um, hard to talk about, right? Um, you're spreading goodness because you're opening my eyes to a lot of things that I'm not even aware of. And I love
Beautiful.
that. And I love learning things, and you've taught me a lot just being on this podcast. So Thank you
So
so much.
beautiful. Yeah. And the listening power, a lot of people's lives have been affected by every single person that comes on and tells their story. And
Right.
it's what this space is about, is that we actually liberate each other by
Yes.
telling our story. And we liberate parts of ourselves we don't even know are trapped, because
Yep.
we've created entire personas that didn't need those aspects of us,
Yep.
until we've created internal safety where those places and parts of us can come out to play again. And
Yeah.
this is power. So we help each other heal. And on
Yeah.
that note, tell us why you chose the song, or tell us about the song you chose and why you chose it.
The song is from a band called Downset, and the song is called Anger. And when I was young and in the early 90s, Downset was a band that was a bunch of different graffiti artists from different graffiti crews, and they gained a lot of notoriety. And Anger was like one of their main songs. And like when we would be in the slam pit, everybody knew that I would be the one bringing the energy to the slam pit. You know, it was like my song. And so the song starts out, it goes, anger, hostility towards the opposition, anger, hostility towards the opposition, anger, hostility towards the opposition. And then it goes, anger. And it's just very like, it just describes, I mean, and then you listen to the lyrics and it's kind of, I mean, it's about living in LA, and it's about having, having a tough, childhood, and living with, um, police brutality and shit like that, like racism, all kinds of shit like that. Yeah. So
Right
that's just
on.
one of my go-to songs. I think when the documentary first came out, like that was the song we were playing when it had my scene in it. And then the rebooted version, I think they couldn't get permission or something like that to use the song, so they put another song in there. But
Right
yeah,
on.
part
All
of
right,
it's,
cool. Well, let's listen to this song. And
yep,
for copyright purposes, we don't listen to the whole thing. But if you want to hear the whole thing, which I encourage, click in the show notes, and there is an Uncomfortable Conversations playlist that actually has a song from every episode that we've had so far. So
awesome.
download that to get a feel. And let's listen to our song, Downset, Anger by Downset.
There you go.
Anger, hostility towards the opposition. 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 Anger! 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 What's the capital? Boom, 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 boom. Damn! 187 LA train mark.
All right, y'all. Don't you miss out on that full song,
There you
because that
should have
is
put
worthy.
should have let him do the lyrics a little bit more. Nah, that's cool.
Well,
Um,
they mute us out on YouTube anyways, but
oh, really?
but it's just safer for copyrighted purposes. And then click the link
Got
and
you.
go listen to the whole thing, folks.
Hell
Take
yeah.
that in. And also, it's just so great to have music that helps us access these places in us that are
Yes.
totally frozen over. And it's awesome to have music like that. So thank you.
Hell yeah. Thank you
All
so
right,
much.
folks. My pleasure.
Let,
Oh, let me stop
yeah,
this.
let me know when you get everything going. And then are you on Instagram?
Hold on. Let me just go ahead and wrap up here.
Yep. Handle it.
Well, folks, I want to just say thank you for listening. And this concludes another episode of the Uncomfortable Conversations podcast, the untold stories of the 3HO Kundalini Yoga community. If you'd like to contribute to this broadcast, you can make a one-time or a monthly donation at gurunishan.com. I have both my podcasts up on my website, and you can also contact me from my website or email me at gn@gurunishan.com if you would like to be a guest on the podcast and share your story. Be sure to subscribe and follow my work at gurunishan.com as well. And also follow my latest media platform called Conversations You Can Feel. Most recently, we just launched a co-authorship and publication of the Under the Yoga Mat book, which is The Dark History of Yogi Bhajan's Kundalini Yoga. Els Koonin, who is out of Belgium, transcribed some of the podcasts, some of the survivor stories from my podcast, took content as articles and lectures of YB from the last 50 years and have put it all together in one book. So if you struggle to help somebody else understand the dark history of Yogi Bhajan's Kundalini Yoga, how Sikh Dharma was used, or how Sikh the religion was used to create legitimacy, and all the other facts and research that has been done and storytelling that has been done, get that book. It will also be in the show notes, because it's here to help us explain that there is a very, very dark history in this community that continues to propagate itself as the yoga of awareness. And I hope you all are catching it by now. KRI and the whole organization are mitigating and trying to limit their legal liability so they can carry on with their money-making activities called Yogi Tea and Kundalini Yoga. And it's not going to stop. It's not even unique. It's a predatory formula that goes back as far as colonialism and imperialism. This stuff isn't new. It's all over the world, as you can tell, but it continues to happen in spiritual spaces. And so this book is really to support everyone to really understand how spiritual abuse happens like this, how 50 years of child neglect and abuse could go on in the name of consciousness. It's not unique to our community, but it's a formula that's absolutely in play today. So that book can help, especially people that are still teaching yoga, make sure that they know about this. Anyway, thanks for listening. We appreciate you. Rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. And we'll talk to you on the next episode.